And welcome back to Survivor Hot Takes. It is me, Coach Drew, with no nickname today because I couldn't think of one. We are joined today by Emily and Adam from the Survivor Buffs. And today we're doing a retrospective, a recap of Survivor Season 8, Survivor All-Stars, who Emily and Adam are both moderate to big fans of. Adam, I'm pretty sure had it in B tier for when the Buffs did their tier lists. Emily speaks very. You had A. Okay, even worse. Emily had it. Has it pretty high on hers.
Number one. That's it.
So before we get started, we'll start with Emily first. Biggest hot take from Survivor All Stars.
I have so many. Okay, well, I have one personal hot take before we get started. Dry January sucks, and so I'm getting chocolate wasted tonight. I'm drinking hot chocolate from 12. That's my personal hot take. But my for real hot take is that I really think that the final jury was the most lit that it's ever been and ever will be. I really enjoyed the passion, the personal connection. The people were literally roasting each other and really meant it, except for Kathy. But that's for another time. But anyway, that's my hot take.
All right, Adam.
Yeah, I also have a good bit. The jury one was definitely one I was considering. I mean, first of all, Drew, I don't know how you don't like the season, man. A tier at the very least. Wouldn't say it's my favorite season of all time, but it's definitely up there.
He's on your side. Just let him have that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was worried I was be outnumbered here. Not that I can't handle it. I have a lot of points, I think, to back up why I think this is a great season, but we'll get to those. I mean, Mogo, come on, Drew, come on.
Okay,
okay. If I had to pick one hot take, I'll say, and maybe most people agree with this, so it's not a hot take, but we'll see. I'll say Rob played the best second place game in the show's history.
I put Dom up there, but yes. I put Dom up there, but I would say Mariano 1 or 2.
Would you guys hate me forever if I thought that Russell Hantz also played a really good number 2? Like I think that he was a good.
I mean, I would, but Adam might
Emphasis on second.
I would hate you for it. But okay. So I would say that my hot take for this season is that they got the cast right. I don't think that. So I do think they left out certain people that could have been on the cast, but I think that the people that they did cast filled their roles from beginning to end. And I guess we'll kind of get started with that. Rewatching the season, Adam, I know that it's been a little bit since you rewatched it. What did you think of the initial cast when you first watched the season and every other watch since then? Do you think that they got the cast right? Who would you have liked to have seen on the cast? And who would you have not liked to see on the cast, etc.?
It's funny, when I first watched the season, I would have been super, super young. It was like the first season that I really remember. I always say Guatemala is the season I started with because it's the first season I clearly remember from start to finish watching it on my own. Whereas All Stars was the first season where I would it was past my bedtime because my bedtime was 8. But sometimes during Survivor days, I would sit in Steeler games. I would sit on the sofa at night and doze off as my parents were watching. So I remember little pieces here and there. So I probably don't remember my first reaction, but probably seen the season 3 times since then, if I had to guess. I remember liking the cast. Like you said, I think there's definitely some people that they left off, but I also know that Sandra was invited, but then she got really sick, so that she couldn't come because she got sick.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Sandra got really sick. There was a couple, I think Fair Play, same thing. He also was got so sick, not malaria. He had something. I can't remember what he had. Something there. It was couldn't even walk. He was so sick from Pearl Islands. Pretty much everyone from Pearl Islands, they almost didn't consider asking. For some reason, Rupert said he felt more healthy at the end of Pearl Islands than he did at the beginning. So he was the one they were able to keep. But I know they wanted Fair Play. I know they wanted Sandra. I know they wanted what's his name?
Sean Rector?
Second, Clay Jordan.
Oh, Clay Jordan.
Ryan?
Yeah, I know they wanted Clay Jordan. He told me it was between him and Rudy because they wanted, but they could only have one like old guy. So they ended up going with Rudy just because he had a bigger fan base and more people watched Borneo than did Thailand. So like that makes sense. Yeah, no, overall, I think that, like you said, I think they filled the roles out well with the cast. Like, you know, they had the young guys, they had like the young pretty people, and then like young people who aren't as pretty, but maybe are like a bit more strategic and play the game a bit more aggressively. They had like the mom, they had like the dad, they had the young athletic person, the older athletic person. They had like a good balance. Honestly, the best like balance of stereotypes, like Survivor stereotypes, in my opinion, in any like all returnee season. Because in future returnee seasons are, you know, it's like heroes and villains, or it's like people deserve a second chance. Whereas this was just all stars. You know, there really wasn't like a theme to the season besides the best of the best up until that point. So I think that's one thing of many that they did right this season.
Yeah. And the way that like the theatrics in it, like that was my jam. Like the chopper, Jeff Probst, like doing all these crazy stunts on the jet ski too. I don't know. I was really into it. I think they really found a way to really play up on the theatrics to really push up all the hype, you know. So they just alone in cinematics, it was like prime, you know,
because this was supposed to be the last season, right? Like initially they were like, okay, this is, I think they were like, All Stars is our last, let's go out with a bang. And similar to Heroes and Villains, it was like supposed to be what they thought was going to be the last season, let's go out with a bang, because I know it debuted after the Super Bowl, so they really wanted to go all out and really make it pop. And of course it did great in the ratings, largely part due to Rob and Amber, which I'm sure we're probably going to get to at some point. So yeah, it seemed like with all aspects of this season, they really wanted to make it pop.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so as we are introduced to the cast, one thing that's so funny about this season as compared to most other All-Star seasons is the fact that the players try to play it off like they don't know who else is there. Which is so funny because, of course, they know who else is there. Because at one point, and I don't know if they forgot to cut this from the edit or whatever it is, when they get back to camp after they vote out Lex, Rob gives a confessional where he's like, oh, yeah, Lex let something loose that him and Big Tom had this plan from the beginning to do this. And it's like, well, Lex and Big Tom never crossed paths tribe-wise during the game, which means that there was clearly some type of pregame going into this.
And Rob called him out on that too, even like in like the final, like whenever they did, I think it was like the final tribal, you know, like after, not like the first reunion, but like the second reunion. He was like, he called him out. He's like, didn't you know? Like, I already knew that you and Lex already had a plan going into this. You were going to vote me out. And he like didn't know how to respond. He's like a deer in headlights, which is typically Big Tom, but like it was like extra Big Tom. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I like, because it's very much old school. So I enjoyed sitting there pretending to be ignorant, like, oh, wow, that's crazy. When they first see the cast, it's like, oh, my goodness, I played with this person. Now, like, you know, with years on me, it's, you know, obviously, we get in Winners at War, period. They're like, oh, yeah, we knew who was coming out, blah, 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 except for maybe Rob and Sandra, and even then, I'm like, I don't know. So we arrive on the beaches, and from where I'm sitting, the Shapiro tribe is the one that is most appealing to me as a child, I don't know, I think I was like 13 when the season came out, because Alicia was one of my favorite people from Australian Outback. Cesarino, period, was my favorite person from Amazon. I liked Mariano for the most part from Marquesas. Sue was just an American villain by this point. Amber, we all know why Amber was actually on the season, but whatever. And then Big Tom. Big Tom was like my third favorite person in Africa. So I very much related to that. And going back and watching it now and watching it then, it's like, yeah, this tribe was where this is the fun tribe. I won't say it's the Kumbaya tribe, obviously, but it's definitely the fun tribe of the season. Which is why it's so great that they never have to vote anyone out until, well, they vote out Sesternino, and then they don't have to vote anyone out again until they swap and Mogo Mogo switches over and becomes Shapiro. So what did you think of the tribe dynamics when the game first started? What did you think of the boot order for the first couple of episodes? And do you think it was the right choice for most people involved?
I really liked all three tribes. That they were very, very well balanced. For the most part, I think they did a really, really good job at balancing like different strengths and weaknesses and different strategy very evenly through all of them. Who I was the most impressed with, honestly, was in Saboga was Jenna, who like I really didn't think Jenna L, not Jenna Marasco, R.I.P. But like Jenna, like I didn't realize what a strategist she was. You know what I mean? And like she was really going cutthroat from the start, which is the whole reason why Tina was like nixed and why Ethan's back was against the wall, which she's dead to me for, because Ethan deserves a million things, but voting out is not one of them. You know.
Adam?
Yeah, I definitely think that one of the negative points for me for this season was the fact that early on it was, let's get out the winners. Like, I totally understand it and get it. And I feel like if I was on there, I would probably do the same thing. Like, it makes sense. But at the same time, it's like, okay, we're here to see like gameplay. It almost feels like maybe the first with the voting out Tina, and then obviously Jenna didn't get voted out, but I feel like she probably wouldn't have made it. Marasco wouldn't have made it super far, and then Hatch followed shortly after. So props to Ethan. I think was the winner that made it the furthest.
Yes.
Yeah, so props to him. So that was definitely like a negative point in the early episodes for me. If I did have one for the season, it would be going after the winners.
I think itself, though, that was. Oh, I'm sorry, I cut you off. Keep talking. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, but I do think that a lot of like the storylines that made the season so great later on maybe started with the alliances of voting out the winners. So I guess in the long term, it did end up panning out for me. But what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, I think that it was strategic in itself to vote out all the winners, because that in itself is a huge cluster that could have been an alliance whenever they got to a point where they could merge or whenever they started blending together, So I think they were trying to be a little bit more like spearheaded a little bit earlier on before it became a bigger problem. That's what I think, but I don't know.
So my whole thing with Jenna Lewis this season, so I'm torn on her, especially after just finishing watching the season for like 1,000th time. I understood her rationale for wanting to get rid of winners. I do.
Yeah.
I actually did not mind her pre-merge with her whole plan of doing this. I didn't like Jenna merge on because she kind of sat on this high horse, especially when it came to Sheehan. Like, I feel like Jenna and Alicia were like the primary people like antagonizing Sheehan. It wasn't Bosch and Rob or Amber who were like controlling everything. It were, for lack of a better phrase, it was their lackeys that were sitting here basically bullying Sheehan at this point. And so I understand voting out the winners. I do. But even when Probst asks, if you're sitting, if someone is sitting at the end and they're a winner and it's next to someone else, and Jenna just flat says, "I will never vote for a winner," period. Like, just based off of her moral compass, I guess.
Right.
I was like, you know what? She is playing cutthroat. She is playing. I don't want to play like I did in the first season. And like anyone that came and played this season, that played in the first season, with the exception of Richard Hatch, that didn't try to change up their game plan, that's on them. Because Richard was the only one in season one, besides maybe Greg, that was playing the game as a game. And so it was great to see Jenna come back out this time and play the game like a game and not like no alliances, none of this, none of that. She actually played it to win, and you see it paid dividends in the end. She finished Final 3. I actually think it was her best chance was not going to Rocks at Final 4. But we'll get to that. So as the season progresses, for me, as I start watching it, it's like, okay, they're getting rid of all the winners and all the popular people at the time of the season airing. So if people remember, at the time of the season airing, Boston Rob was not Boston Rob. He was just Rob Mariano from Marquesas who finished 10th place. The more famous Rob was Rob Sesternino. And so you get rid of the winners. You get rid of Colby and Jerry, who their whole thing from Australia was big news when the season came out. You get rid of Rob Sesternino because he's, at that time, the best player to ever win. You get rid of, who else am I missing? Rudy, who was America's sweetheart at that point. You get rid of all these people, and I feel like it does set up for an amazing merge that just doesn't pay off. So what were you guys' thoughts as far as who went? Do you think that there was any chance that anybody going pre-merge could have gained footing at the merge? Let's say none of the winners. Let's say none of the winners make it, because it seems pretty apparent that they were never going to make it. And who do you think could have done well if they had hit merge?
Yeah, I think it's kind of the same reason that Heroes and Villains was so great. It's like coming into the season, all the favorites to win ended up going home pre-merge. Like I remember when Heroes and Villains, when they released the cast, everyone thought, oh, like the potential winners, okay, Rob, Tom Westman, Sari, like they all kind of went seemingly back to back pre-merge. Like I think that's one reason that set up the post-merge of All-Stars to be so great, is that all the favorites kind of left early, because it allowed for people who didn't really have time for their characters to be, and kind of a similar thing with Cambodia too. I don't think a lot of people thought Jeremy would get as far. I don't think a lot of people thought Wentworth would get as far as she did. So it allowed for people that had a lot of potential, but who in their previous seasons just, for various reasons didn't have the opportunity to shine. So it gave a lot of like news stories to be created, and I feel like if that hadn't happened in All Stars, where all the favorites to win didn't get voted off, or in Jenna's case, or even in Sue's case, left so early, we wouldn't have got all those great storylines. It would have just kind of been a recycling of past victories to the end, or journeys to the end.
Yeah, and I did really like the fact that they brought on a lot of the winners, because it really helped to create like a very diverse cast with a lot of different variations of how it would play out, So I think it was really good. They had a lot of underdogs, because everyone loves a good underdog story, and I think that's why people loved Shapira so much. You know what I mean? Like that entire tribe, like Rob even said at the start, it was like, we're just a band of misfits, just like trying to make it together to the next round. Like it was like the most heartwarming thing. And I was like, heck yeah. Like I want every single one of them to be able to make it to the end. And it really helps to create like individual stories, but also like a really good underdog story,
Right.
For sure.
Might lost Drew for a second, but yeah, I think it was an excellent pre-merge for sure. It did have like some, with Jenna leaving and Sue leaving, did have like some interesting but also like awkward moments. But like I said, I think a lot of the foundations for some of the post-merge storylines, and obviously post-merge really thing. I don't know how fast you want to jump to post-merge, Drew, but things really kick off pretty quick.
No, okay. So there are a few things that I want to touch on for pre-merge that I feel like left All-Stars. So All-Stars is in my top 25, but I think it might be exactly 25. And I think it's because of certain things that happen in the pre-merge. Now,
like what? Go ahead, lay it on us. We aren't scared.
Okay, so first of all, Jenna's mother. The way that the leading up to Jenna leaving, that entire episode where like Kathy is, I think the part that like always sticks out to me is when Kathy says, "You're being a bit of a cancer to our tribe right now," to a woman whose mother is dying of cancer back home, who is so depressed that she's thinking about quitting the game, and that's the word that you use. And then when she says, "Hey, I'm quitting," and Probst just, "Oh yeah, how do you feel about Jenna quitting?" It's like, "Oh, I would have never done that." Big Tom's like, "Oh, my family could die in a car crash, and I would never quit," and blah blah blah. And Jenna's just sitting there like, "Well, I guess I'll just, jump off a cliff," basically.
She was in pieces. I have a question about that actually. Do we have any tea as to why she came in the first place? Like, did she like, was she contractually obligated to go? Because I feel
Oh
like
no, I don't think she was
complete
contracted. I think she just obviously. I
No?
think she honestly just wanted to come play
Yeah.
again,
Right. Okay.
and she got there and realized, and she had daughter's intuition or whatever it is. Mom's gonna die soon, and we see what 9 days later she did.
Yeah.
So like when Prob's like, oh, it seems like you've been talking to her. Like, what's going on? She's like, no, I just feel like my mom's gonna die. So the way that whole thing was solved, dealt with. The other thing, obviously, is the Sue Rich thing. And when I was younger, I watched it. It has never clicked in my head because I was like 13 years old. I just played it off as like this happened. Moving on. Every time I've watched the season since then, I've tried to analyze it. I've tried to do this, that, and the other. And watching it this time, I turned my phone off because I'm like going to pay attention to everything that we're shown in this challenge period, just to see what happened. And we're not going to go into details about what may or may not have happened because, it would turn into a whole another episode. But I think that the way that the Shapira tribe reacted after she quit, along with Kathy's confessional about how she didn't respect the way that Sue handled herself in that situation, whether Sue was telling the truth or not, the fact that the Shapiro tribe were cheering about her, this happening, and Kathy saying this, it's like, this is uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah, I agree. Kathy has like very outspoken traditional values that like I feel like everything she says is just like it's just like the craziest stuff, very like matter of fact, completely insensitive or unempathetic, so that to me like always like really hits hard. And who like also really angered me with his comments on like this whole Sue situation is Rupert, which like surprises me so much because Rupert is like America's sweetheart. Like they painted him off to be this big martyr. Every time someone says my favorite's the dude in the tie-dye, everyone knows it's Rupert, and he's one of the first ones that people really remember whenever you bring up Survivor. But multiple times and multiple occasions, he was like totally being like a chauvinist chode. You know what I mean? Like he was like I'm sorry. Was that inappropriate?
No, you can say chode. It's fine.
Well, he was totally a chauvinist chode. I have a lot of feelings about him, but like he said something along the lines of like, she totally was just in it for the money, and I mean, the only person who really had her back, which also really surprised me, was Boston Rob, like he's like, well, we don't know what happened, and I think that in itself is exactly the way that you should be going about that. It's not your story to tell, and it's not your story to weigh in on. You know what I mean?
Adam, thoughts? Yeah, on either way. I guess on either the Jenna or the Sue thing.
Or Rupert being a chauvinist chode.
Yeah, the Jenna thing. I mean, it's hard for me to say anything bad about Jenna because she's a fellow Pittsburgh native. It's kind of a weird situation because, like, it kind of the similar thing with Sue. Like, we obviously are only getting what the edit shows us. Like, we don't know if Jenna was like, "Oh, I'm considering leaving," and that's all that she said. Even if they showed clips of people saying, "Oh, she's leaving because of her mom," those sort of clips could have been recorded after she left or after her speech at the challenge, and they put it beforehand so as to create a build up to her leaving, as opposed to her leaving being out of nowhere. So we have no idea if like people had no clue that it was in relation to her mom, or if it was in relation to her mom. Maybe it could have been, "Oh, my mom's getting remarried," or "My mom is just sick." Maybe they didn't realize to the extent of it until after she left, and then again, maybe they edited it.
Oh no, Kathy knew. Kathy knew because Jenna's like, Kathy's like, "Oh yeah, I get that she has a confessional. She's like, I didn't know that Jenna's mom was in a cancer ward, basically.
Facility.
Yeah, she should not have come out here. She shouldn't have come out here. Like, absolutely not. Blah blah blah. So, like, all the confessionals that we get are basically stating, we know Jenna's mom is sick. we think it's a bad. Well, we meaning a couple people are like, oh, I think it's a bad idea that she came out here, and
that's
it's
another
like,
thing is maybe she came out because if you come out, like even if you're on, because she was at the reunion, right?
Yeah, she came back, and that's whenever she shared that her mother did pass.
Right. So maybe she came just so she could collect, because you get money no matter whether you come in last place or first, you still get some amount. So maybe it was, oh, I'll come back, but I will leave because of my mom, but leave after like the first, maybe I'll stay for the first episode or first vote and leave. Maybe this was a whole plan in her head to leave early so that she could be there for her mom's like final days, final week, but still collect the money. And then obviously maybe she thought, oh, maybe because I'm quitting, but it's for it's not just because I'm hungry or whatever. It's a legit reason why I'm quitting. Most, I've seen lists of people being like, what's the most justified quit? And usually this and Terry in Second Chances is usually up there towards the top. So maybe she thought, okay, most quitters aren't invited back, but this might be one that like I can still collect the money, still be part of like at that point what was supposed to be the biggest season of all time, and potentially be invited back. So if that was the plan from the start, then that actually seems like a well thought out plan. I just feel like we'll never truly know what all went into that. But to also touch on the Sue situation, kind of the same thing. It's like we know so little, and like the one thing is like it's sort of become one of those things where it's like Sue says this, Hatch says this. The difference is Hatch obviously is still very vocal and still a part of like the Survivor online community. He has his own YouTube channel. He's put out a couple of videos on his take on the situation. I think maybe just one specifically on that, but he's definitely touched about it on multiple videos of his. He's on Cameo. Like he's very vocal about it. Whereas as far as I'm aware, since it happened, I don't remember ever hearing Sue talk about it.
Yeah, she had. So I know that I didn't watch this myself, but I did hear that maybe was it Andrew? Were you the one who told me this? Like they like that Hatch and Sue like went on Good Morning America like the morning after they. Is this true? I think because like it was like the morning after like the whole incident happened, they squashed the beef on Good Morning America, and they like had this discussion. So because they knew there would be like at least like a little bit of controversy on that.
So I don't know about that, and the only, like that could be the case. The only reason I'm hesitant to say that is because when the reunion happened, they put Sesternino in between the two of them, or they put Jenna, whoever was sitting, and even though they went out back to back, they have somebody sitting in the middle of them, which led me to believe that they were purposely not sat next to each other because of the issues that went on. But like, I should probably look that up because I didn't know about that, so it wasn't me that told.
Yeah. Oh no, I have to make sure that I'm right, but for some reason I know this, and I don't know why I know this. But like I do think that it's a fact. 'Cause it's very much ingrained into my brain. So I'll do some digging and we'll discuss.
Okay, so before we get to the merge, to end on a lighter, I guess it's not really a lighter note because it annoys me to no end. Emily has a hot take, I guess, on one Rob Sesternino. So I'll let you take the lead on this one, and then we'll move to the merge.
I'm only going to speak for 10 seconds. Rob Sesternino is trash, disrespectfully. I don't think that he's that good of a player. I think that you think he's a good player, and I support your fake beliefs and that they aren't valid. Those are my opinions. That's what I'm going to say.
And I guess I guess that might lead into a Rob Sesternino, is he a good player type episode sometime down the line. Obviously, I think that he's one of the greatest players of all time to never win. He's in my top 10. He's to never win. Yeah,
he's never made it in the final two.
He's made it to the final three. He made it to the final three.
He was the first person voted out in his tribe. How embarrassing! So embarrassing.
I mean, okay, let's just. Russell Hanson's the first person voted out of his tribe in Redemption Island. So like, let's not do this.
I can't believe her. I see your comment and you're dead to me. You heard it live.
But before Before, not even before, let's get to, as I want to pull up this.
Okay, breaking news. Kim Weaver's dead to me. That's my best friend. Not anymore.
So we hit the merge, and I guess technically we don't merge where we usually do at this point in Survivor history. So usually they merge at 10. The first boot off is not on the jury, and then everyone on is on the jury. But at 10, they just swap, and Amber gets swap screwed. One of the first real swap screws that have happened. Well, not swap screws because she ends up making it out. So they do the trivia challenge, which I love playing along with every time I watch the season. It's like, oh, I'm amazing. What did you think about? Do you think it was dirty gameplay for production to let Rob ask Lex to save Amber? And do you think that Amber had any say once she got back to camp, or do you think that Lex was always going to agree to that deal? So basically, I'm asking: is it all Rob, or was it Rob and Amber in that situation?
Ooh,
Adam, we'll start with you first.
It's kind of tough. I feel like we can really only speculate on this one. If I had to guess, I feel like based on what I saw, it was more so Rob. I did hear that, I can't remember where I heard this, but I did hear that Rob and Lex had actually talked a lot more than what the episode showed. It's just that was the only bit that they were actually able to record. I believe that they were kind of talking that whole challenge during, before, and after, because there's that period where they hold the tribes together before they come out to set up cameras and stuff, and I believe that they were talking the whole time, but obviously they can't film that part because they're in trucks and stuff, but that would also make you think, okay, if Lex was there and Rob was there, then obviously Amber would have had to have been there too. But then at the same time, Jerry would have had to have been there. So it's I feel like there's so much of that transaction, I don't know what else to call it, that we didn't see. So it's kind of hard to make a good guess. But I feel like based on what we were showing, it seems like it was mostly a Rob thing, if I had to guess.
Emily?
I can get on a whole spiel. It'll be only tell you 10 more seconds. I think that when we've talked about this a lot, I think that Survivor, love it, it's my favorite thing, but they kind of do a crappy job sometimes at editing female winners, so even they showed a very quick snippet of her begging, was it Kathy, for her life? I forget, was it Kathy? Yeah, and she was like, this is me, this is my last chance, I'm gonna try, blah, 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 but in reality, I'm sure there was so much more that went behind it. Of course, Boss Rob is a very mobster strong presence, and I think that in itself is really strong, but he was still only pretty much one person, whenever you look at what Shapiro looked like at the time. I guess maybe Mogo at this point, I don't know, I got confused. Anyway, you know what I mean, but I think that he was a very strong presence, but he still only had one number and they still had other connections. So if they wanted to wipe him out, they definitely could have. I think that in reality, I think that it was a lot of Amber's charm, the fact that she was really subtle, the way that she's been very fluid, and how she did agree to kind of merge together to create one super alliance. So I think that it was it was Rob, and that they make it look like Rob, but I think it was mainly Amber.
So this is, I think that it's probably in the middle. I think it was more Rob and Amber. Just even if we're going based off of what we saw on the show, Rob says, "Hey Lex, if you get me, I got you." And Amber going back to camp, begging Kathy, and I think telling Kathy and Lex, "If you save me, we will do me, you, Lex, Big Tom, and somebody else as a final five, or maybe in a final four." And Kathy, even when they have that whole confrontation with Boston Rob, mentions that as a fact, and Boston Rob's like, I had no allegiance to Kathy in the game, so I don't know where that came from. One thing that I will say about the final 10 on, we get our first, after Jerry gets voted out, we get our first reference, and this is something I didn't pick up on until this time watching it. We get our first reference of Amber is in control of the game. because Lex, when he goes to vote Amber out, the vote that he gets voted out, he even says like, "You're a little errand boy." He refers to Amber and talks about how Rob is her little errand boy to do this, that, and the other. And that's not the last time that we hear another player reference Amber as having more agency in the game than the casual viewer might see. So from Merge on, this is where I start to turn on the season. As far as why it's so low.
In a good way or in a bad way?
No, in a bad way. Because in my opinion, there's only one really good episode from the Merge on, and it was the episode that Cheyenne beats Rupert in the challenge. It's because you're sitting there rooting for her. You're rooting for it to not be a pagonging. You're rooting for the underdog to be able to pull something out. And I think that, before that challenge, we had the reward challenge where it was touchy subjects, basically, for everyone in the war community. Touchy subjects. Where, the pecking order challenge. And Alicia gets all these negative answers. And at that point, she should have realized, I'm not in this group. And then she doubly should have realized it when, at that challenge, the reward was Rupert got to pick who got what dinner. And her and Big Tom, along with Cheyenne, got the shit end of the stick, basically. Mm-hmm. And so you're sitting there watching it, and you're thinking, wow, it'd be crazy if Cheyenne won this challenge because maybe this game might get flipped. Now, it doesn't really get flipped. The status quo still remains, and they just vote out the person bottom of the alliance, Alicia. But rewatching it today, it's like, wow, this is still very good. And it's the only good episode of The Merge, maybe until the final tribal council, which is not the entire episode. It's just the final tribal council, which we will get to in just a second. But I just need to know, how do you guys enjoy this Merge as much as you do when it's pretty cut and dry from beginning to end?
First of all, how dare you disrespect me in my house? Okay, go ahead, Adam. You're good.
I was just saying, one of the appeals to it, it's almost kind of like watching a Conor McGregor fight. Even if you hate Conor McGregor, it's like you want to he wins, or maybe not in recent history, but like when he was going through that stretch of just always winning, even if you hated him, you watched every fight because you wanted to see that point when he would finally lose. So it was, or was he actually going to accomplish all the things he set out to do? So it was kind of a similar thing with All Stars, where it's like, okay, is this Rob and Amber alliance, are they actually going to make it all the way to the finale, or are they going to break up beforehand? So you watched every episode going into it thinking, is this going to be it? Is this where they break up? And is the breakup going to be their own alliance turning on them because they realize they're a power couple? Is it going to be Amber turning on Rob because she realizes she's never going to beat him at the end, or vice versa? So there's all these ifs, ands, or buts. So I feel like rewatching this season it's one of those seasons that I feel like rewatching it is never going to be as great as the first watch by far. I feel like you can say that for a lot of seasons, but I feel like this might be the biggest split. Like the first time watching All Stars, I feel like is just super enjoyable because of that reason. Post merge of is it? And again, it's kind of like you said, coming into it, like the face of think about how many great legends were in All Stars. I mean, all time great characters like Rupert, Lex, Hatch, Rudy, Sue, all these people, and yet the two people that carried the season was 10th place in Marquesas and. What was Amber? 6th in Australian Outback. 6th. So it's just crazy that the people and then Jenna, who people remembered from Borneo, but she wasn't.
Played. She was good, like this season.
Yeah, here's another hot take. Jenna, one of the most improved players in the history of the show.
Her and Kelly Wentworth. Absolutely.
Man, honestly, I was blown away. Yeah. We had a level of queendom in this season like nothing I've ever seen. And so that's one reason that I love it so much. I think we had a lot of really, really strong, powerful women, and feminism, love that. A few pretty douchey men. I'm not going to name names, Colby. So I felt a little bit about that, but I also like it's a very personal season for me because like Andrew, you know this because I tell you this like every day, and you're like, yeah, I already know this. You told me 27 times. But Adam, I don't know if you know, my aunt's one of my aunt's best friends is Amber. So I got to know like a lot of these things whenever I was like, I don't even know how old I was, like 8 maybe, whenever this was all coming live, and like so my mom would know all these different things and would have like a little bit of inside scoop every single episode. So I knew that Boston Rob was going to propose to Amber before it even happened, which I thought was like the coolest thing. And then like she signed like the TV guide for me. So it's for me, it's like a very personal, it's like a Pittsburgh pride thing, but it's also like I get to know all these real, like I know this person is real, you know what I mean? And so it was very personal to me.
So Adam, you made a great point with the first time watching. Because as a 12, 13-year-old kid, first time I watched this season as a Boston Rob fan at the time, I guess I still kind of like him, but this was like the most amazing scene to me. And then as I become a dejected adult and as I get older, I'm like, well, I hate the season. And now I fall somewhere pretty much in the middle. And I'll give my actual ranking at the end of the episode, which is soon. But I will say that I love this at the beginning. So, before we get to Final Tribal, I do want to point out that when Cheyenne gets voted out, she references Amber as the threat to win the game. And when Rob wins immunity, Jenna says Rob's going to lose in a blowout to Amber, and he might lose close to me. So it further pushes this narrative that I think a lot of people kind of forget for some reason, that like the way that things were being perceived to the players at that time was Rob's not going to win this, which is so crazy now when people are like, oh yeah, Amber didn't deserve to win, they were just bitter. It's like, no, because people that were actually playing in the game before they were voted out were like, yeah, Amber's in control. And watching them play The Amazing Race, side note, Amber did have a lot of agency in their couple on Amazing Race. If you haven't watched either of their seasons, please go do that.
I have to watch it. I haven't watched it yet.
But we get to Final Tribal. It's Rob and Amber. As a kid, I thought, yeah, Rob's going to win this. As an adult, without like knowing that Amber wins, it's like, yeah, clearly Amber's going to win. And we get the most bitter Final Tribal Council ever. Now, I understand why. It was the first time in Survivor history that friends had come back to play, and they felt betrayed by their friends. So how we'll do this about 5 more minutes because we do want to wrap up. How did you guys? Analyze this Final Tribal? Do you think that it was just an overly bitter jury? Do you think that they voted based off of how they felt towards the winner, or was it more towards the loser? And do you think that a lot of them, or a few of them, regretted some of the things they said?
Well, I definitely agree. I think this was the most bitter a jury has ever been, even compared to like 19 and 20. I think a lot of people like to think a big reason that like Russell didn't win or that Parvati didn't win 20 was because of that they didn't like him or they were too arrogant. But I think a big part of it too was they didn't realize just exactly how big the moves they had made throughout the game. Similar to I think Xander not winning all the way here in 41. I feel like the people just didn't realize how much big moves were made, as opposed to like in 19. I feel like they didn't understand at the time exactly what Russell had just done over the past 39 days, because he was and still is very tight with a lot of those people. They just didn't realize how great of a game he played. Whereas in All Stars, they knew just how great Rob had played. They knew all the big moves he made, how in control he was of every vote, the backstabbing, the betrayal, the doing whatever it takes to win the game. They knew that. Like, his game was very much at the forefront. But he played in a way where most of his swagger came across as arrogance as opposed to confidence. And I think the way he voted people out rubbed them the wrong way. Like I think Kathy sums it up so great when she says like, you probably still could have made it as far as you did without doing it the way you did it, without being as cocky as you were, without like backstabbing everyone, without leading so many people on. So yes, I think they were the most bitter jury, but I also, from being a fan watching, I get why they were at the same time. But I also don't want to. It's weird because while it was a bitter jury, I do think Amber played a great game. Like when we did Russell's Top 100, like I had Amber way ahead of everybody else because I truly thought that she is one of the more underrated winners of the like first 10 seasons. I think she kind of implemented some strategies that we still use today. Like if you think about it, like the meat shield strategy, I feel like this was really the first time that the meat shield strategy had been like put in place. Amber kind of not hiding behind Rob, but like sort of being in his shadow a little bit, knowing that he was going to take a lot of the heat, a lot of the bullets from the moves that they very clearly were both making together, but Rob was at the forefront. So she was seen as a little more sidekicky, and Rob was seen a little more, like mobster-like, as you said.
Absolutely. And I think that also, like, I totally agree with what you're saying. I also kind of put into consideration, like, Final Tribal, most of the jury was pretty much undecided, with the exception of, like, I think, like, Lex, and then, like, that was pretty much it, I think. And also Big Tom, probably. Mm-hmm. Like, a lot, like, the rest of them were pretty much undecided. And whenever you think about how hard, the jury pushed both Amber and Rob really hard. They said a lot of really cutthroat, hurtful things. And I rewatched it like a few minutes ago just to make sure that I was right by feeling this way. And it wasn't just me being biased to like my Queen Amber. But like, whenever you look at it, it's like Rob completely crumbled under the pressure. He's like, I'm a terrible person and I don't think I played a good game. And like, don't give me the money. He didn't actually say that, but like the way that he was acting pretty much like was the exact same, was the exact reason why he didn't get it. It's because he was arrogant until he had to be confident, at the very end. So to me, like, I think that like, that in this way, Amber was able to be confident whenever she needed to be and step out of his shadow when she had to be, but she used that meat shield until that very last minute. You know what I mean?
And
I think another thing too is Lex. Like, we didn't touch too much on like the Lex like backstab betrayal situation, but I don't think a lot of people realize like because Lex mentioned it once at Final Tribal, like we were friends. I don't think people realize like him and Lex were really good friends. I mean, like Rob, flew to California and like stayed at his house for weeks. Lex flew to Boston and lived with him for weeks. Like their families knew each other's families. I mean, they were like tight, like really, really close friends. It wasn't like they just were at one or two charity events like most survivors are and say they're friends. I mean, they were really tight. And without that, I don't think Lex would have even considered voting off Jerry instead of Amber. I think that, but I think Survivor, and honestly still to this day, likes to hide like the outside of the game stuff as much as they can. But I think that was a huge thing. Like I don't think there was any way he was, and same thing with Kathy. Kathy and Rob were also really, really close in person. So I don't think there was any chance he was going to get either of their votes.
He actually got Kathy's vote though at the end.
He did.
He got Kathy's. He got Kathy's.
She was like, I'm such a sucker. And she like put
I'm
his
your
name
mom.
up. I'm like, oh my God, so theatrical.
God, Kathy. Amber rolling her eyes at her during the reunion is like the best. But guys, I do like realizing now that we do have a lot more because I do want to touch on those relationships. How would y'all feel about doing a part 2?
Oh, tag me in. I have lots of
Adam. We can just do full Final Tribal and past the reunion. I think we would get a lot more content out of it. So if you guys are down, I would love to come back next week and do it again. If you guys are down, I'm just asking live.
Well, I have plans. Yeah, bring me in. I'm good.
Well, then, thank you all for tuning into part 1 of our All-Stars recap retrospective. Make sure to subscribe to not only our channel, but Adam and Gideon's Survivor Buffs channel. Make sure to tune in next week for the conclusion of this. And, thank you all once again for sticking with us through all the craziness. And until then, we'll see you guys